My name is Julia Morgan. I'm 36 years old, and from the outside, my life looks almost cinematic. I live in a two-story lakeside home in a quiet suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. White shutters, wraparound porch, lavender blooming in the front yard. Most mornings, you'd find me brewing coffee in the sunlit kitchen, humming while arranging fresh flowers. I'm a part-time watercolor artist, but mostly, I've devoted myself to being a homemaker. I've always taken pride in it, not just in the upkeep of the house, but in creating warmth, stability, and care. My husband, Andrew Morgan, is 40, a regional sales manager for a biotech firm. Clean-cut, tall, charming, with a smile that disarms even the hardest personalities in the room. People adore him. Waiters remember his name. Our neighbors wave like we're royalty. He knows how to say all the right things, and for a long time, I believed every one of them. We met at a friend's wedding and dated for nearly 3 years before getting married. Back then, Andrew was sweet, attentive, driven, always planning the next adventure. I fell for the way he made me feel like I was the only person in the world when he looked at me. I never imagined anything would change that. At first, our marriage was filled with hope and plans. We wanted children. We painted a nursery before there was even a pregnancy test. But years passed. Doctor appointments blurred together. Medications, injections, diets, waiting, always waiting. Until one day a specialist placed a gentle hand on mine and said, "You've done everything you can. Sometimes, it's just not meant to be." I cried for a week straight. Andrew held me at first, whispering things like, "We're still enough, just the two of us." But slowly his embraces became shorter. His hand slipped from mine more often. I'd catch him watching other families in parks, his eyes full of something he didn't say out loud. Longing, disappointment, maybe even blame. Then came the inheritance. My late Aunt Lillian, a retired architect, left me a generous portfolio of investment properties and cash. I never expected it. The will arrived quietly one fall morning, and suddenly our life shifted. We remodeled the house, took luxury trips, upgraded to a European SUV. Andrew called it a blessing, said it allowed us to live without regrets. But with each upgrade, something between us cracked. He started working later, missing dinners. I tried to understand. After all, successful men are busy men. Or so I told myself. Friends still whispered, "You're so lucky, Julia. Andrew's a catch." And I'd smile tightly because I knew what they saw, the manicured yard, the charming husband, the curated life. But they didn't see the silence that lingered across the dinner table, or the way I sometimes stared at the empty nursery, wondering if the real loss wasn't the baby we never had, but the man who now lived beside me like a stranger. And deep inside, something had begun to shift, something I didn't dare name. Yet. It began with the phone. Andrew used to leave it on the kitchen counter, charger tangled in the fruit bowl. Now, it never left his side. Even in the shower, he took it with him. At first, I laughed it off. "Afraid your boss might call during shampoo?" I teased. He forced a smile. "Deadlines don't wait for dry hair." But I noticed more. The screen always faced down. His thumb hovered protectively over the lock screen, and whenever it buzzed, he'd step out to the garage, murmuring too softly for me to hear. I told myself I was being paranoid, but then he stopped sharing his calendar, something he used to do so I'd know when to warm dinner. I asked casually one night, "Hey, you haven't mentioned your credit card bills lately. Do you want me to go over them like I used to?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. "I've got it. Don't worry about it." His voice was flat, not annoyed, worse, dismissive. A few weeks later, he came home from a trip and tossed his duffel into the laundry room. I reached for it instinctively, like always. "Let me wash your shirts before the wrinkles set." His eyes flicked to me, hard and fast. "I'll do it." "There's confidential paperwork inside." I froze. Andrew had never said anything like that before. Confidential? We shared everything once, even passwords, private notes, little jokes on sticky notes in each other's lunchboxes. Now I couldn't remember the last time I'd even touched his hand without feeling him pull away slightly, like I was interrupting something. Still, I convinced myself, maybe it's work stress, maybe he's just overwhelmed. But then came the party. It was a company mixer, small, catered, held on a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The golden light cast everything in soft glow. Champagne flutes clinked gently, and Andrew worked the room like a politician. His hand hovered gently over the small of my back, but never quite touched me. I stood near the wine table, alone, pretending to enjoy the music. That's when I heard him, just a few steps behind me, in hushed tones. "The Birmingham site's nearly finalized," he said. "After that, things move quickly." A colleague chuckled. "You sure she won't find out?" Andrew laughed under his breath. "Not unless someone talks. Everything's lined up." I felt the stem of my glass tilt in my hand. Birmingham? He'd never mentioned any project there. That city wasn't even in his sales region. When he finally came to stand beside me, his smile was perfect, so perfect it made my skin crawl. "Everything okay?" I asked, testing him. "Of course," he said, brushing my hair behind my ear. "You look beautiful tonight." And yet, I had never felt more invisible. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. My heart beat too loudly in the silence. The man I loved, trusted, was hiding something. But what scared me most wasn't the secret itself. It was the terrifying possibility that he had grown bold enough to think I'd never notice. We left Charlotte just after sunrise, the air cool and still. Andrew drove with one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally adjusting the air vents. "I thought we could use a change of scenery," he said. "Fresh air, good food, just us again." I nodded, forcing a smile. His words were right, but they didn't land. Something in his voice felt too rehearsed. For the first hour, silence stretched between us, interrupted only by soft classic jazz playing from the radio. Andrew kept glancing in the rearview mirror, not once or twice, but every few minutes. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You okay?" I asked casually. "You keep checking the mirror." He gave a forced chuckle. "Just tired. Paranoid from work, I guess." But I didn't buy it. By midday, we pulled off the highway to refuel at an old gas station in a dusty little town called Holston. The kind of place where the sign still had peeling paint and the pump screen flickered like an old television. A faded banner read, "Bay Ridge Gas and Supply." "I'll fill up. Want to grab us something to drink?" Andrew asked, stepping out. "Sure," I replied, my voice quieter than I meant. I walked toward the small store, my sneakers crunching on gravel. As I reached the door, I heard footsteps approaching from the side. A young man in a blue uniform, early 30s, sun-weathered skin, name tag reading Derek, walked by holding a squeegee. He pretended to clean the windshield, then, without a word, slipped something through the narrow window gap of the passenger door. A small folded piece of paper. I stopped in my tracks. He gave a slight shake of his head, eyes urgent, then turned away as if nothing happened. I reached the car, pretending to grab my purse, and with trembling fingers, unfolded the note behind the cover of my shoulder bag. "You need to get out of here, right now. He's not who he says he is. Don't ask. Don't hesitate." My breath caught. I looked up. Andrew was at the back of the car, checking a tire. His phone was to his ear, his voice low. He hadn't noticed. I straightened, heart hammering, legs nearly buckling beneath me. Inside the store, I grabbed 2 water bottles and approached the register slowly. My eyes darted down the back hallway. Derek was there, waiting, his hand gesturing subtly. I hesitated. 1 second, 2. Then I walked toward him. Behind the store, near a row of dumpsters and a humming ice machine, he spoke. "I'm sorry to scare you, ma'am." But I had to. "I saw your husband here a few weeks ago, with another woman. Blonde, younger. They were close. I didn't want to get involved until—" He paused, eyes darting behind me. "Until I overheard what he said." I swallowed. "What did he say?" Derek looked straight at me. "He called her his wife. She asked, 'What about the other one?' He said, "Let this trip take care of her, then everything is ours." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The words Derek had just said echoed in my mind like a siren underwater. Let this trip take care of her. Then everything is ours. I felt the blood drain from my face. My pulse thundered in my ears. Behind us, I heard Andrew's voice, sharp, louder than usual. Julia? Where the hell are you? Derek flinched. He stepped forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. You have to decide now. If you go back out there, you may not get another chance. I looked at him, panic clawing at my chest. I don't have anything, I stammered. No wallet, no ID. My phone's in the car. I'll get you safe, he cut in, eyes steady. I've got a truck out back. We'll go straight to the police, but we need to go now. Another shout from Andrew, closer this time. I nodded. I didn't even feel my feet move, just the rush of wind as we ducked around the back of the station. Derek led me to an old blue pickup parked beneath the shade of a crooked pine tree. The engine was already running. Hurry, don't look back, he said. But I did. Just for a second. And what I saw burned into my memory forever. Andrew rounding the corner, his face twisted in fury, his eyes scanning, hunting. It wasn't confusion on his face, it was rage. We peeled away in a cloud of gravel and dust. Derek drove fast, but steady. My hands trembled in my lap, clutching the water bottle I never paid for. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, he broke the silence. Police station's in Willow Creek, about 25 miles out. We'll be there in less than 30 minutes. I stared out the window. My whole world had tilted sideways. The man I'd loved for over a decade had looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. Erased. I wasn't even sure who he really was anymore. When we arrived, the station was small. No more than a single-story brick building with a white flagpole out front. Inside, the AC hummed faintly as a woman in uniform greeted us at the front desk. Officer Raina Taylor, she said, offering me a kind smile as I tried to explain. My voice shook. I told her about the medical file, the gas station note, the overheard conversation, the second woman. She listened carefully, taking notes. We can't arrest him without hard evidence, she said gently. But we'll file an official report and you can apply for an emergency protective order. Derek stood nearby, arms crossed, protective. I had never met this man before today. But in that moment, he was the only person in the world who had truly seen me. The next morning, I sat in a borrowed hoodie and jeans on a worn leather couch in the corner of the police station's waiting room. I hadn't slept. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Melissa had already called, her voice choked with fury. I'm driving to you today, she'd said. You're not doing this alone. But someone else arrived first. A tall man in his early 40s walked in with a black briefcase and a presence that was both calm and razor-sharp. He introduced himself as Caleb Shaw, a private investigator. Melissa had contacted him through her newsroom's legal team. I've handled cases like this before, he said. What you described, it's not paranoia, it's textbook setup, and I believe your husband is living a double life. I stared at him. Do you really think he was trying to institutionalize me? Caleb didn't answer right away. He simply opened his case, pulled out a small recorder and a manila folder. We'll find out. Within 72 hours, Caleb did what I hadn't been able to do in 11 years. He uncovered the man Andrew Morgan really was. His real name was Anthony Wells. 10 years ago, he legally married another woman named Clara Benson in Birmingham, Alabama. Together, they had a daughter, 9 years old. He had been splitting his time between the two of us, telling each woman his job required frequent travel. Caleb laid out photos on the table. There he was, Andrew or Anthony, with Clara and the little girl, all smiling in front of a white craftsman house. He looked so comfortable, like a man at home. A man who had everything and wanted more. But there's more, Caleb said, his tone shifting. He handed me a printed transcript of phone call recordings Caleb's team had retrieved after securing a court-backed subpoena. In the recordings, Anthony, was speaking to a man named Dr. Stephen Marlowe, a psychiatrist based in Georgia. Andrew, is the paperwork ready? Dr. Marlowe, it's signed. Diagnosis consistent with paranoia, delusional disorder, and emotional instability. Andrew, once she's admitted, I'll sign the control documents. She won't be able to touch a penny. I felt sick. Caleb continued. He paid Marlowe over $8,000. I traced the payments. That file you found in the briefcase? It was fake. Just enough to convince a hospital board if he ever brought you in under stress. I pressed my palms to my eyes. He was planning to lock me away. Yes, Caleb said quietly. And then take everything. Everything I had left from Aunt Lillian. Every property, every dollar, every year of trust. And yet, in the center of all that horror, something inside me ignited. I wasn't just a victim, I was a witness. And now, I was ready to fight back. The day I walked into attorney Naomi Grant's office, I still had dirt under my nails from the motel I'd hidden in the night before. Naomi was sharp-eyed, no nonsense, and dressed like she was ready to go to war. She flipped through Caleb's file with growing intensity, her lips tightening as she read the forged diagnosis, the phone transcripts, the second marriage certificate. This is big, she said. He committed bigamy, fraud, and conspiracy to unlawfully detain, and if we don't act fast, he'll disappear. I nodded, my hands clenched on the edge of her desk. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to burn the whole lie down. Naomi smiled. Good. Because I already called the judge. Within 48 hours, we secured an emergency freeze on all joint accounts and real estate properties. Caleb delivered everything he'd gathered to state investigators in both North Carolina and Alabama. 3 days later, Anthony Wells, was arrested at a short-term rental property near the Alabama border. He had booked a flight to the Cayman Islands under a different name. If we'd waited even another day, he would have vanished. Clara Benson, the woman he'd married in Birmingham, was also detained. She admitted to knowing about me for over 2 years. She called me the gullible wife with the inheritance. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The courtroom was packed the first day of the trial. Local reporters lined the steps with notepads and cameras. People whispered when I walked in, holding Naomi's arm for balance. And there he was. Anthony Wells, handcuffed, pale, jaw tight. For a moment our eyes met, and it felt like a ghost had walked through me. There was no remorse in his face, no recognition, just a cold calculation, as if he was already plotting the next move. But he didn't expect me to stand and testify. I told the court about the changes in him, the late-night calls, the gas station, the note, the fake psychiatric file meant to erase me. I spoke slowly, trembling, but I did not stop. Naomi stood by my side the whole time. When the evidence was presented, audio recordings, forged documents, bank transfers, the second marriage license, the courtroom fell silent. The judge delivered the verdict on a rainy Tuesday. Defendant Anthony Wells is sentenced to 8 years in state prison for bigamy, identity fraud, and conspiracy to unlawfully detain. Clara Benson is sentenced to 2 years probation and required to repay restitution. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. As the bailiff led him out, Anthony turned his head once, perhaps expecting to see a broken woman in the gallery. But all he saw was me, standing tall, free. I sold the house in Charlotte the following month. Every wall, every window, every floorboard held echoes of a life I thought was real. A kitchen once filled with laughter and weekend pancakes had become a museum of lies. I didn't want a single nail from that place anymore. With the proceeds, what Andrew hadn't managed to steal, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved to a small coastal town called St. Simon's Island in Georgia. The house I found was modest. White shingles, a front porch facing the sea, and the smell of salt in the morning air. I didn't know a soul there. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. Every morning, I sat on the porch with a mug of coffee, wrapped in a soft cardigan, listening to the gulls and the sound of waves. Some days I painted. Other days, I simply breathed, learning what it meant to exist without fear. One afternoon, walking past the local library, I saw a flyer taped to the window, Support group for women in coercive relationships. Thursday nights. No judgment, just healing. I almost walked past it, but I didn't. That Thursday, I showed up and sat in the circle with women who looked nothing like me, and yet understood me without words. I told my story, my voice cracked, my hands trembled. But by the time I finished, 3 women were crying, and one reached across the table to hold my hand. Weeks passed. I kept going. I started helping other women navigate the paperwork, the resources, the fear. I watched strangers transform before my eyes, from broken to brave. And in the middle of this quiet new life, Derek called. He'd just gotten his certification as a mechanic and landed a stable job in Savannah. "My mom wants to invite you to dinner," he said sheepishly. "She hasn't stopped talking about how you trusted me that day." I drove there that weekend. Their house was small, cheerful, full of framed photos and warm smells. His mother, Janine, hugged me like I was her own. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, cornbread, sweet tea, but it tasted like a feast. We laughed, we shared stories, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to watch my words or hide behind a smile. Before I left, Janine held my hands in hers. "Thank you for not turning away from my son. You helped him believe good people still exist." I shook my head gently. "No, ma'am, he saved my life." That night, I stood by the water, wind brushing my face, stars shimmering above, and I whispered, "This is what real love feels like: safe, quiet, true." Looking back now, I know the life I thought I lost was never really mine. I found something better. I found me.